Hello and welcome to episode 66 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is Monday, November 20th, 2017. I am Rollo McFlugel, and with me is Slappy Jones 2, and we are both of McFlugel.com. And the show notes page for this episode is McFlugel.com/66, where you'll find links to previous episodes that are relevant and some other things. Other relevant links, as well as social ways to find us on social media. So before I keep stumbling over my words, I'm just going to have Slappy take over and introduce our episode topic.
Yeah, that's right. He did say social ways to find us on social media. So there will be nice. People talking about it. It'll be very, very social.
Yeah, and make sure that you're one of those social people
finding us on social media.
Getting us on social media.
That's right. So anyway, thanks, Rollo. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Today, our topic, let's get right into it. Let's hit it. It's been in the news now for over a year and continues to be in the news. And water cooler talk at work all the time is military propaganda in the NFL or sports in general, but specifically the NFL. Seems like it won't go away. A lot of the players are still kneeling, standing, sitting, putting their arm up, whatever they're doing, and it's making a lot of people angry, like Marshawn Lynch did this past weekend. Played the Oakland Raiders, who Marshawn Lynch plays for, played the New England Patriots in Mexico City. Apparently, I did not see this, but apparently he stood for the Mexican national anthem and sat or kneeled for the American national anthem, and Donald Trump had an issue with that. What did he tweet out? Something like fire him or suspend him or fine him or something?
Yeah, I think he called for the NFL to suspend him.
Right. So, of course, it just won't go away. This keeps going on. So we're going to talk about it. So, Rollo, first of all, do you think there is a lot of military propaganda in the NFL?
It is absurd. It is so over the top. And I don't like, regardless of what because it's funny, because the protests aren't about the military. They were never about the military. And Colin Kaepernick, when he started doing the protest, specifically said, this is not about the military, because that's what people were asking him, because that's what everyone automatically associates the flag and the national anthem and any other thing associated with that with the military, which shows how brainwashed people are. It was about how he thought that blacks were mistreated by the police and the country at large. Whether you agree with that or not, whether you agree with him doing the protests or not, those are separate issues to getting upset about disrespecting the military over this. It's absurd. And then now that they're just, and also, I know this has been said ad nauseum. I'm sure we've said it on this show. I'm sure we've written it in articles. And outside of this, I'm sure that you've heard it. But the NFL is being paid by the government to run all this pomp and circumstance for the military. This never happened before. It's all, it's not the NFL just deciding, hey, we want to honor the troops, honor the military. This is the U.S. government paying the NFL to propagandize through them. So I know that people, there's this strong, what's it called, emotional attachment to the military, because we're told that they're, fighting for our freedom and our lives and everything. And so I do appreciate people who are willing to risk their lives in order to protect people that they'll never meet. I think that's an honorable thing. I think that's good that there are people who are out there willing to do that. If you've listened to our show or read any of our content, I'm sure you'll know that we don't think that's what the soldiers are actually doing. Not necessarily by their own fault. It's more by the politicians and the other players in the game who are creating these wars and pulling those strings. But it's just, I don't even know what point I was trying to make, because I'm just rambling on about it's And fine, I'll just keep going. They run the commercials.
Yeah, keep
so
going.
It's
Well, hold on. I'll cut you off. I'll give you a break. You can think. So obviously, if you've listened to our show at all, you know Raul and I are very anti-war, and we just look at what happened in the Middle East right now. That entire area of the world is destroyed. Countless of innocent people, not terrorists, not people in ISIS who, yeah, we could talk about the founding of ISIS and why they even exist and all that. We could keep going back forever. But the bottom line is innocent people are killed all the time, or displaced, or their whole lives turned upside down, or like in Yemen, where you have a Navy blockade not letting food in and people are starving. What do you think they're going to do? Their children are starving. Yes, they get angry, but our military is doing that. I don't think it's good to join the military. I said it. It doesn't mean I hate people who have served. Many of them in my family, but I don't think we should be encouraging people to serve in the military. I think it's bad. I think they come back broken, many of them, not all of them. And I think we should be fighting to stop wars and stop having veterans so we can stop thanking our soldiers. And what these advertisements do and bringing these guys out at the games. Raul and I were actually at a Flyers game recently, and they rolled someone out there. They put he came down the tunnel and waved and got a Flyers jersey and tickets to the game. That was the loudest the arena was the entire game. Now, the Flyers scored 4 goals that night, 4 or 5, right? Went to overtime and they lost. But the loudest that arena got was when they brought out a guy who had served in Iraq. I don't know what he did. I don't even think they said he did anything. They gave his rank and what he did, and he's home. And the entire place stood up and cheered. And what does that do? There's kids watching. Their heroes are on the ice or on the football field, for that matter. I remember when I was a kid, there was nothing bigger than being a professional baseball player. That's what I wanted to do. I loved baseball players. Well, you go to a game and you see the baseball players or the hockey players or football players or whatever turn and clap for this guy, and then after the game talk about how great that guy is. It's like, wow, I might not be able to become a professional baseball player, but I can enroll and I can enlist in the Army. I'll be someone. I'll be a hero. And the Department of Justice isn't paying these millions of dollars to the NFL teams just because. It's obviously a recruiting tool. It's obviously propaganda. And I think that's a bad thing. I don't think we should be encouraging people to take part in the U.S. empire. So I'm kind of rambling now too.
No, but I think you were very clear, much more clear than what I was saying. But no, it absolutely is the recruiting thing. And you nailed it with saying that, not everyone can be an NFL player, but almost anyone can sign up for the military. And these commercials that they're running, the other commercial break, they have one of these commercials where they have players talking about how they're out in the field with these guys, and you see, I just like to thank them for what they're doing, and it's amazing what they're doing. I could never do that. I mean, that's very powerful because, let's face it, kids look up to professional athletes for the reasons that you just said. I mean, everyone grows up, almost everyone grows up wanting to play a professional sport. I was the same way. And so when you see guys that are, your heroes, that you watch them every week, if it's football or every other night, if it's another sport, when they get on the screen, and especially with all the players out there that aren't good role models and go out and be idiots and do dumb stuff, and you're always, as a kid, you're being told, don't look up to them. But when a guy gets on the screen and he does something like say, yeah, I look up to the troops, because that's something that everyone is going to go around to, like, yeah, well, that's a good guy right there. That's what a good role model does. He says that, shows you the good way, like that. Like that's so powerful. And that's why it bothers me so much, because they're just playing, because, the war on terror has been going on 16 years now. It's the longest war in the history of the U.S., and they keep adding theaters to the wars. I mean, how many countries is the U.S. military in now? Right. You know, you got to keep the pipeline flowing with soldiers, and if they don't have this propaganda campaign, I don't know that they would sustain it. So they're going over the top with it, and I don't know. It seems like it's probably working to me. Unfortunately,
the entire arena at the Flyers game, it sure looked like it was working.
Right.
And here's another. Let's make this point too. A just war. We need to defend ourselves. And if some country or group of people or something was invading my town, and so my neighbor came out with his guns, or the army came in with their guns and defended it, yes, I would thank them for sure. But Americans have no experience at all. None. They have no clue what a just war is, because we being the United States have not been in one in a long time. And I am 100% against an unjust war. I'm also trying to maintain my composure here, if that's not abundantly clear. So yeah, when people make the point, well, you know, thank them for defending us or whatever, you would be happy if we needed them. Well, sure, yeah. If someone invaded us, some country invaded us for some reason, yeah, defense would be great. But we don't do. The Department of Defense is an Orwellian term, and that's why it used to be called the Department of War, but it changed back in, I think, in the 50s, was it 50s or World War II time? Yeah. They changed from Department of War to Department of Defense, and we haven't used our military to defend anything.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't exactly a defensive war. They changed it during or after.
No, exactly. It was just a propaganda change. It was, and the propaganda is everywhere. You see it in high schools. They bring in the Army guys, the Marines. They're all wearing their nice uniforms. The girls love them, and you know, they say, "Hey, you want this? It's real easy. Just sign your name here." They hang their pictures on the wall. We have memorials to them. Every street I drive past is named after a soldier who passed away. Shouldn't that open your eyes? Like the Vietnam Memorial, when you look at that wall, why are we sending our kids? Why are we doing that? For what? What does it accomplish? I think we should discourage people from enlisting. And this is something we talked about before we went on, but thankfully I don't have to judge these people. I don't know. We were talking about the moral responsibility that people have. And it's, I think, a very difficult question, because if your entire life you're lied to, which Rollo and I don't want to speak for him, but I think he's on the same page. We agree the propaganda is lies to get you involved in the politicians' wars. And if you're lied to your whole life and told this is a great thing and this is good and this is respectable, and literally destroying an entire region of the world is somehow a good thing, or keeping us safe even though terrorist attacks are continuing to rise every day. You listen to any politician's speech, they're always talking about how terrorism is on the rise and we need to do this and we have to fight the war. It's just circular logic. Like a terrorist attack happens, we need more war, more terrorists, more war, more terrorists, more war, and it never stops, and it never will stop. This is an endless war that will never stop. Wow, I just took myself off my train of thought.
Yeah, like my first.
No. Yeah. So these people are being lied to, and they're joining and doing what they think is good. Rollo and I want to try to do our little part to stop spreading the lies. Luckily, we don't have to judge people. I don't know if you're morally responsible if you're lied to your whole life and then you go kill a bunch of people. I don't know. It's not for me to decide, but we can think about it now and we can discourage people from doing that.
Right. And when people come back from it, we can try to help them heal. Because like you said, they're lied to. The soldiers are victims too, because they're lied to. They're sold a bill of goods. You're told your entire life that, you know, the wars are out to defend freedom. And we're always told that, and they're running it in these NFL propaganda commercials and everything, that they're out defending freedom and protecting people that they'll never meet. And that's so honorable. And sure, like I said, yes, that by itself,
Right, a defensive
is.
war. Yeah, absolutely, an honorable thing to do.
But they go out there and they're not doing any of that. But they're and who knows what's going on in their heads while they're doing it. And plus, there's the fog of war is a real thing. You're getting shot at, and you're out there to try to get yourself and your buddies home. Obviously, I've never been out there, but from everyone I've heard talk about it, their main goal is to get out alive. So I understand them shooting back at that point. They're humans.
Hey, and let's have some empathy too, and let's think of the people who are invaded. Let's think of the Iraqi people, and the Syrians, and the Libyans, and the Somalians, the Yemeni, all of them. What would we do? What would we do if the Russians came in and overthrew Trump and put in some brutal dictator? Would we sit back and take it? Or would we become the terrorists?
Right. Well, there's the movie Red Dawn where that happens. I guess it's supposed to be like the Koreans come over and kind of take over the country. And there's a group of kids that, do the guerrilla warfare, terrorism to fight back.
Yeah, I haven't seen the movie because I've seen like 2 movies in my life, but are they the protagonists?
Yeah. Like who wouldn't do that? Who wouldn't defend their homeland? So it's something you have to look at on both sides. Yeah, they might have Al Qaeda and ISIS. They're bad dudes, and they did a lot of terrible stuff. That because obviously it takes 2 to tango. So. Al Qaeda does, launches attack against the U.S. The U.S. goes over and fights a war. And now all of a sudden, innocent civilians are thrown in the crossfire. Now they're getting shot up and their neighborhoods are getting blown up. So, yeah, they're going to shoot back just like the American soldier who's over there. And, yeah, obviously it's different because it's different defending your homeland. But, people are put in terrible situations. And so everyone involved is a victim. And that's kind of the point I was trying to make. So, and I think we had an episode about this, is how do we treat soldiers when they come back? And should we, lecture them on, the evil imperialistic work they did? I don't think that's the best course of action. I don't think you should ignore
I don't think
those
it's very
aspects.
fruitful, yeah.
Right. But,
yeah,
you shouldn't just for the sake, because most American soldiers in these wars die from committing suicide after they come back because they have PTSD.
22 a day or something like that.
Yeah, something absurd like that. So for the sake of American people, or just people in general, not coming back.
For the sake of all people.
Yeah. Right. Not blowing their brains out because they can't come to terms with what they've done. Yeah, I think we have, I don't know if it's your responsibility to say something and open our mouths to maybe prevent another suicide so that they're never put in that position in the first place. That they're about ready to sign up and they say, you know what, maybe I don't want to do this. I don't know. Who knows? Who's going to listen to this podcast episode? Who's going to read an article that we wrote that has the effect on them, that makes them put something in the back of their head that makes them not sign up for the military? I have no idea. But
do your research. Go find out why we're there and what we're doing, and find out if that's something you're willing to die for.
Right. I mean, I think it's pretty common knowledge that the Iraq War was based on complete lies. I was talking to someone the other day who's absolutely, eats up all the propaganda about the war and the military and all that stuff. And even he said, when I brought up Iraq, he said, well, I'm not going to defend that. All right. So do we really want to believe that's just a super isolated case? Or, let's apply a little bit of logic here and reason.
Yeah. And so the other thing I hear is, right, all right, so, okay, fine. Iraq war was lies. All right, but now it is what it is. Now we have to deal with it. Now we have ISIS. Now we have these terrorists. What do we do? Nothing?
Well, I think not. I don't think nothing is necessarily the answer, but nothing is certainly better than continuing to escalate it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would say do nothing in terms of military action. Yeah,
Right.
let's do nothing. But let's do something. Let's trade.
Yeah.
That usually works out well. Hey, blue
Right.
jeans and rock and roll, right? That's what took down the USSR, right? Let's try that. Let's try that technique. Let's give them, through trade, voluntary interaction, a better life. Let's see what happens. That's not doing nothing, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
Doing nothing militarily. Yeah, when you kill someone, like, what was it, a couple months, maybe more than a couple months ago, it was a fairly big news story that 200 some civilians got killed because they were bombing a neighborhood trying to get a ISIS sniper. Well, 200 civilians are dead. What do you think their family? You think their family's like, well, thankfully the U.S. military is getting rid of these ISIS snipers? No, you just created probably 200 more terrorists. It's a never-ending war, and it really will never end. The more you attack them, the more they'll attack us. What is it? Whose quote is it? It's like terrorism is the price of empire.
Huh.
I don't know. I've heard that. I've heard
know.
that quote. I don't know who said it. We'll attribute it in the show notes page. But I thought that's a great line, and it's always been the case. Something I heard Dave Smith mention once is, the Irish, when they were fighting in Northern Ireland, they weren't radical Muslims. They weren't radicalized Muslims. They were fighting the British. They wanted their freedom. That's what's always going to happen. It's the price of empire. When you try to control the world, they're going to attack you back, and it's going to continuing to happen as long as we have our bases all over the world and doing these military exercises all over the world. We just had some special ops guys die in Niger. Who knew? We had something going on in Mali. Like, can anyone even find those places on a map?
The first reaction to that kind of thing should be not, oh, we got to find out what happened. It's, wait, why are we in Niger?
Wait, when did we go to war there? Why are we doing that? What would we do if Russian special forces were doing operations in Atlanta, Georgia?
Right.
What do you think
that wouldn't be an active war?
Right. Even if they were only going after bad guys, like let's say there was some terrorist cell in the United States and the Russians came in and took them out. Would we be like, oh yeah, well, they were there fighting terrorism, so it's cool. Even if they killed no innocent civilians.
Look at what happens.
Look
at what happens when there's a U.S. warship off the coast of Iran and an Iranian vessel near its own country gets too close to the U.S.
That's an act of war.
Yeah.
When the Iranians took captured the sailors.
Right. Or when...
Do you remember that story?
Yeah. Or when a Syrian airplane flies over its country somewhere and it's violating some sort of airspace or something. That's like...
Right. Just imagine if the Russians came in and put a no-fly zone over Washington, D.C. or over Philadelphia or New York or name any city, and then shot down one of our planes that was flying through that no-fly zone. We'd be like, well, they told us it was a no-fly zone and they violated it, so...
Right.
Of course not. This would be war immediately.
The only reason that stuff happens or is allowed to happen is because the U.S. right now is the biggest, baddest kid on the block. And, other countries, governments aren't going to, they're not going to win a conventional war. So they stand down. Is that really what the kind of, way that we want to act, that might makes right? Because that only gets you so far, because you eventually, you can do that. You could be the bully for a while, but eventually everyone gets sick of the bully. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it's that quiet, really quiet, nice kid in the classroom. You poke him enough, he's going to take a swing, and that's when you're not going to be expecting it, and that's when you get clocked the worst. So
Right.
you're
It's fun.
you're playing with fire. You're absolutely playing with fire. You're instigating these even just ignoring the terrorists because they kind of operate on different terms. But man, with Iran and I guess specifically Iran and Syria, you can't expect them to just continue to take it, because you wouldn't expect your own country to sit there and take. You can't imagine the war cries and beating of the war drums that would be happening if the shoe were on the other foot. So, let's sit back and think about this a little bit.
So back to our original point, we think you should be aware and notice the propaganda and don't support it. I'm not going to lie. When we were at that Flyers game, had we sat down, we would have been the only two there sitting. We stood up, but I think we were talking during it. I mean,
yeah, we certainly weren't.
We weren't clapping. We were not clapping. I mean, what are you going to do? I don't need a beer poured on me to make a political point. It's not going to change anyone's mind anyway. But when you're having these conversations, if a kid comes to you and says he's thinking about joining the military, why not have a conversation with him instead of being like, "Oh, that's great, kid. Yeah, that's respectable." Why don't you have a conversation and make sure he understands exactly what he's doing before he goes and does it? So that's kind of
18 is really young. I
was a totally different person when I was 18.
I was completely different. The thing, and the problem is, you're that age, you think you know everything. So he's got such impressionable minds and just really you don't have your mind all put together yet. You don't have your maturity put together all yet. So it's like they're preying on you. It's terrible. I can't even. Yeah. I have trouble putting the words together for how frustrating and sickening it is to me with the propaganda that they do. So,
and it's everywhere, and you're surrounded by it at all times. And so just be aware of it. I mean, this is the kind of propaganda. If you pulled up a book of like 1930s Germany or the Soviet Union in the 50s or something, we would laugh at it. And it's happening to us right now. And so maybe, if we keep spreading this word and other people are, and people who are much smarter than we are and have a bigger following are doing the same thing, maybe 100 years, my great-grandchildren will look back and think of how funny it was that Americans fell for this stuff. How sad it was, too. How crazy times it was back then. But it's not going to happen unless we point it out.
Right.
And then act on it.
Yeah. So I guess the moral of the story is that to borrow something from the government regarding terrorism, if you see something, say something.
That's a wrap.
Yeah. So as you see this stuff going on, open your mouth about it, because it's some. You know what? Most people don't think the way that we do, and so it can be very intimidating. But
start the conversation.
Yeah, this isn't about trying to lower your taxes. This is about a kid whose family gets blown to bits.
In fact,
the kid survives it. So this is much more important. Ending these wars.
I was just going to say, taxation is theft. Of course, we say that all the time. Theft is really bad, but taking another life is even worse. And so that should be number one priority. In my opinion, that should be everyone's number one priority, to stop killing people and destroying towns and infrastructure and businesses and neighborhoods, and having these people spread out all over the world with nothing because they had to leave their homes because it got bombed. So that should be number one. Everything else is a far second. Taxes, yeah, I get it. Taxation is theft, but that takes a backseat to war for sure, in my opinion.
Right. So I think that about wraps us up for that.
Yeah.
I
a
have
free market story.
I do. So late last week, my car was having problems. Long story short, it ended up being the air throttle housing motor was shorted, and so my car was acting all goofy and terrible. Reduced the engine power on me. I was trying to drive up the hill to get to my house. Didn't know if I was actually going to make it. Was wondering if I'd have to walk up to my house, get my tractor out, and tow my car the rest of the way. That was actually a real thought I had. So the next day when I was trying to go to work, I realized that I wasn't going to make it. I've got a long commute. So I pulled over, actually signed up on the spot for AAA, and then called for their tow truck. And I wanted to go to my mechanic, which was about 30 miles away. And so I'm sitting in there realizing that, I've got an hour-long car ride with some tow truck driver. And so I was like, I don't know. This could be like absolutely terrible. I don't know who this guy's going to be. So he shows up, and we get in the car and we start talking, and he was just like the greatest guy in the world. We had such a fun time together. It made the trip seem not like an hour at all. We talked about all sorts of stuff, but it shows you that there's a huge incentive to have personable tow truck drivers who do a good job. That's part of their business. I even sent a tweet out that day to AAA saying, "Hey, you also like the service in general is great. Everything, AAA did a great job with doing everything I needed them to do." But I sent a tweet out saying, "Hey, great job," and also to my tow truck driver, he was awesome. So if they had cranky, miserable guys driving their trucks, that wouldn't reflect well on the customers. And so instead of going around saying, someone saying, "Oh yeah, my driver was awesome. We had a great time. I recommend AAA now." You'd be like, "It was terrible. I can't believe I just sit there for an hour with them. It was so awkward." And so
do not get AAA. Yeah.
Right. I'd be saying, I remember I said it was like kind of the same thing with the Men's Warehouse stories that, they made a mistake. And in this case for Men's Warehouse, they made a mistake, but they treated me well and, took care of me. So instead of me going around saying, it's a terrible company, I paid them some pretty good compliments around. So it's the little things like that you don't necessarily think about, that businesses will take extra care to make sure that they take care of them because that's their business. And they can't afford to have weirdos driving their trucks around. Not saying that can't or never happens, but it kind of
it does. It's probably a lot cheaper.
Right. But I kind of realized that I was sitting in the car having a good time with them. It's like, it's probably not a coincidence that he's a fun guy.
Right. When they're back at the shop, they probably put the personable guy out to drive the tow truck. I don't know how that works, but if there's a guy, the boss is going to be like, "We don't need him out in front of customers. We'll keep him in the shop. He's very good at fixing an engine, but he's not great at talking to people. So we'll leave him in the garage."
Right.
Businesses will make that decision.
Mm-hmm. So it worked out for me. It's actually AAA is a lot cheaper than I thought it was going to be. So it's a good deal.
So is that our new sponsor, AAA?
Yeah. I don't know if we were allowed to say that or if there's issues with that, but there's no.
I was going to say they are not our sponsor, and we're not.
Yeah, there's no sort of affiliate link or anything
at all. Nothing. Page. We have no connection to them other than that Rollo is a member.
Yeah, but they can send us money
and likes their service
for
Yeah, if they want to advertise, we'll take it.
Yeah,
we approve their service.
So with that, again, the show notes page is mcfugel.com /66. You'll find links to some relevant articles as well as recent or related episodes on this. as well as ways to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, as well as catch up with us on some other social media outlets. And most importantly, sign up for our email newsletter and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher. So we'll happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Thanksgiving episode.
So you can, make sure when you're at the Thanksgiving table with your family this week, you say, when you go around saying, what are you thankful for? You go around saying, I'm thankful for McFlugel.com.
Yes, everybody say that.
Yes. I'd be impressed if anyone actually does, because I know I'm not going to do that at the dinner table.
Yeah, neither will I. But anyway, we'll catch you next week.
All right. Have a good one.
Peace.